Welcome to the Strategic Veteran, where we chart the course from service to civilian triumph. I'm Adam Peters, a veteran, entrepreneur, and your fellow navigator in the quest for a life of impact and fulfillment. My mission is simple: to empower you with the tools and stories that turn challenge into opportunity. Having walked the path from active duty to where I stand now, I understand the search for purpose that comes with hanging up the uniform. It's a path I've walked, with its trials, its tribulations, and its victories, and it's a journey we're on together. This podcast is more than just conversation. It's a beacon for those seeking to redefine our missions through entrepreneurship. It's about igniting the entrepreneurial spirit that lives within us, the spirit that compels us to create, lead, and make our mark on the world. Here we connect with veterans who have built businesses, sparked change, and found their purpose in the marketplace of ideas. They're not just surviving, they're thriving. They've transformed their service into startups, their experiences into enterprises, and they're proof that you can too. So whether you're scribbling business plans on napkins or stepping into the arena of innovation, remember, you're not alone. You're in good company. So let's explore these stories of transformation and take the first steps together on our path to purpose. Let's begin. Welcome back to the Strategic Veteran Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Peters, and today we're honored to have Jim Fuse with us. Jim's journey is one of unwavering commitment and resilience. Having enlisted in the Marine Corps in 1984, the year before I was born, Jim worked across financial management, contracting, and logistics, dedicating over 2 decades to service, including a deployment after 9/11, which marked a pivotal moment in his career. Following his retirement as a lieutenant colonel, Jim found his calling in marketing, launching Fusion Marketing in 2016, where he helps businesses master social media and Amazon influencer programs. Today, we're going to dive deep into Jim's journey, his passion for helping veterans transition, and how he's harnessing his Marine Corps values to impact the civilian world. So let's welcome a true embodiment of what it means to be a strategic veteran, Mr. Jim Fuse, as he shares his incredible story with us. Jim, brother, thank you for being here, man.
Hey, thanks for having me, Adam. I'm really excited to be here. I think, we can never forget where we came from. And I think that was one of the things, and maybe you did as well, that I know at one point I struggled when I, retired. It was kind of like, well, now I've got to be a civilian. But the truth is, like you said, the Marine Corps had been a part of my blood since 1984. So, 25 years later, how am I just going to leave that behind? And so I came up, well, I didn't come up with it, through coaching and mentoring. Marketing the Marine Corps way became my tagline, and a way to kind of stand apart with my business as well.
I love it. I can't wait to dive into that stuff, but we've got some things to cover before that. So let's talk about, where did you grow up and what inspired you to join?
Yeah, so I grew up, I was born in Indiana. That's where my dad was originally from, Indianapolis.
I was born in Evansville.
Funny. And then, But when I was 2, we moved to Northern Virginia. And so I grew up there, but my dad was actually in the Navy. And he got out before I was born when he married my mom. But, that was part of my inspiration, I think, because, even though my dad didn't do a career in the Navy, I think he always looked up to it. He was the honor man in Navy boot camp. He made it to E6 in 8 years. So he had a great career going, and he decided family was more important than, I guess, going around the world. And so, back before, cable, we had all these things, the John Wayne movies and things like that. So I used to watch a lot of war movies. I used to read a lot of history books, especially history of Second World War. I was always fascinated by that. And so it was just one of those things. And then, literally probably 3 weeks after the bombing of the Marine barracks in Beirut, I joined the Marine Corps as a senior in high school, and then as I like to joke sometimes, literally Friday the 13th of July, I reported to 1984. Reported to Paris Island, South Carolina, and started my journey as a Marine.
Why the Marine Corps?
Well, I was always playing sports, athletic, and I think it was wanting to be the best. And the recruiters have this some really good stuff, and they had this video called such as Regiments Hand Down Forever, and it's just a great, in fact, it's actually still out on YouTube. I mean, this was like some people may remember these things. They were called VCR tapes.
Yep, I remember.
They would play that on the little player there at the recruiting table in the high school, and that was like, wow, this looks really, really cool, really exciting, and it's kind of like that first in sort of thing, and so I think that was part of it, plus the dress blues are really sharp uniform. Chicks dig it.
It's always the uniform with you Marines. It's every single Marine that I've had on here. It's some element of wanting to be the best, because that is very much the portrayal that Marine recruiters put out there. I remember it from when I was looking to join as well. And then the uniform, and it never fails. It's always the uniform. So what was your job in the Marine Corps? What did you go in to do? And was that what you wanted to do, or was that what they told you were going to do?
Yeah. Unfortunately for me, I wanted to be an infantry officer, but it didn't work out that way. I mean, I did actually, because I ended up in ROTC while in college, so that helped pay for my school. I got to go to jump school at Fort Benning, which I guess is now Fort Moore. I know they keep changing all the names of these bases.
Fort Benning. It's just Fort Benning.
It'll always be Benning to me as well. So I was hoping to be infantry, but we have this thing at in the Marine Corps, the basic school, where they have what they call the quality spread. So they split your class into thirds and based on your standing. So I was in the middle of the top third. So at that point, right, when we're young, we sometimes, I guess you could look at it a couple ways. Is it a foolish or not foolish decision? It's like, well, if I can't be a grunt, I'm getting out in 4 years and going on with life. So my second choice was financial management, because that was what my degree in college was. And I didn't get infantry. And of course, I'll never forget my company, or my platoon commander, this captain from the basic schools, like, well, we were thinking about giving you your third choice, which was artillery, but we're giving you your second choice. And I just, because maybe I'd been in the Marines already, I just was like, aye, sir, and walked out. He didn't say like, oh, well, can I have my third choice? Would that be better? I didn't question it, right? We don't do
that. Similar situation.
Yeah. So I started out in financial management. It was great in the sense I got to go to Hawaii. It was my first duty station for 4 years, and then went to Okinawa. But then where I was, I guess I'd say fortunate, is I was with the operating forces, right? So it wasn't like I was always in, like these jobs where you're not involved with the people that are making things happen. And so while I was in Okinawa, I had a couple bosses that said, hey, you might want to go to get your master's in, contracting is a great field. And what was funny is, once I had seen what was going on in the Marine Corps, it was like I was always trying to like get back towards the infantry sort of thing. So I said, all right, well, I'm going to go into contracting, because if I had gone to Monterey and put down financial management as a choice, that's probably what would have happened. So I didn't even make that a choice. So I got into contracting, and that ended me up at Blunt Island in Jacksonville, Florida, where I was the contracting officer, what's called the Marine Corps Pre-Positioning Program. And for people that may not know what that is, that's where we literally have these 3 squadrons of these, I guess we'll call them maritime ships, that have all this gear on them, as we say, waiting for trouble in different parts of the world. And they will literally pull into these ports, unload all the equipment we need to, kick butt and take names. And so while I was there, 9/11 happened, and I ended up deploying as the contracting officer for the Marine Central Command Forward. So I was in Bahrain. We were setting things up, getting ready for eventually what ended up being, I guess we call it Desert Storm 2. And so when I got done with that deployment, went back to the States, and then got sent to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, where I ended up spending the rest of my career between the 2nd Marine Expeditionary Force and deploying before the Second Gulf War occurred. Actually ended up in Germany, and that's a whole nother story. And then I came back, and then 2006, I was handpicked to be part of the initial staff that stood up the Marine Special Operations Command. And that's where I finished my career in special ops. And because after that, it was like, what did I have to look forward to? They wanted me to go to the Pentagon. It's like, no, that's okay. I'm done.
Do you know John Daly?
I do.
I've had him on this show. What an incredible story for him, going through Detachment 1 and then ultimately being a civilian with MARSOC and seeing that through and then realizing, he's got to let go at some point and train the individuals who are going to be doing that every day. I had an amazing conversation with him, and that was kind of the inspiration to ask you about the uniform, because he remembers being at a parade when he was a kid, and it was the uniform that sold him on being a Marine. So
yeah, John's an amazing guy. In fact, I've got his new book somewhere around here.
Yeah, Tough Rugged Bastards. What a great book.
Yes, and I've got he's got me into rucking. I've got my ruck pack, and I've been starting to do that instead, because I ran the Marine Corps Marathon 2 years ago, and I do plan to run it when I turn 60. So I've run it in 30s, 40s, and 50s. So 60s next, but my wife thinks I'm crazy.
Yeah, strong backs and hard feet. That was his thing. Yeah. So do you know Aaron Brandfast also then?
I don't know if I remember that name, but I do know. I'm sure John and I have a lot of common friends from back then, because I left MARSOC. I retired out of MARSOC in 2009, and then I was a contractor there for about, I think, another year before I went and worked for another company that was no longer on the compound, but off of the compound. But he's.
Aaron and John know each other. Aaron was one of the initial guys for the the MARSOC stuff, and then I've had the privilege of having Timothy Parkhurst on here with the Marine Scout Sniper Foundation. I know he did some stuff with MARSOC, so it's really cool to get to talk to all of you guys and kind of hear all your stories. Where do we want to go from here, man? Financial management. That was my big question. Now, the military is absolutely terrible, and our country as a whole is absolutely terrible at teaching us about financial literacy in general. And so I assume financial management means you were just balancing the books for the Marine Corps. You weren't teaching young Marines how to be responsible with their money.
Yeah, we were, and it was one of my frustrations, and one of the reasons I probably, once I retired, wasn't interested in continuing to pursue that, is that so I was the comptroller when I was at the 2nd Marine Expeditionary Force during wartime. So we had these crazy budgets of, hundreds of millions of dollars for not just our daily operations, but then the money to, as we used to call it, reconstitute the force, and so we had to identify, hey, these are the things we need to replace. And so then at MARSOC, I had 2 jobs. I was the guy in charge of the daily execution, and I had to go fight for our out-year budgets. So I was involved with military construction funding, procurement funding, daily operations funding, and having to talk to both SOCOM and the Marine Corps, because it's like the other weird thing about when you're, coming from your component is that the Marine Corps has to provide the funding for things that Marines normally need. And then SOCOM would provide us what they call SOF, Special Operations Forces unique funding. So you sometimes have those 2 organizations telling you, oh, that's not my job, that's their job. No, that's not my, So that was always interesting. And then, and John may have talked about this as well. When we first started, we were like the redheaded stepchildren. Nobody really wanted us, but because Rumsfeld said it was going to happen, it was happening. We had a great commander in General Dennis Halick that made sure that we kept on point. And so it was neat, because I used to go to what they call the board of directors meetings at SOCOM. I was sitting in the room with all the commanders and the sergeant majors, like right behind them. So like, I got to know people like General McChrystal. And so it's just interesting seeing all that, and now being, kind of separated from that, but I also don't miss it, because like September was always miserable, because you had to literally spend every penny you had and be prepared to spend more up until like midnight on the 30th. And then it's like within the next month, people are canceling stuff like, well, why is that money, falling off the books? And it's like, well, why were we even spending it? There was no there was no incentive to save or to do things that I learned in financial management, like do a return on investment thing. It's like, hey, if we buy this thing or buy this program, we'll save all this money in the future. Oh, no, we don't want to do that. We're going to spend for the more expensive, less efficient thing.
Yeah, of course.
Because we can't afford to have our budget take a hit. So I always thought that was interesting. It's one of those things. I'm sure, Adam, if they hired us, we could we could go save the government, millions of dollars and
billions
just
of dollars.
Billions,
yeah.
True. And we'll just take a small percentage of that. Give us 1% of what we save you.
It's funny that you bring that up, because I just watched the Kash Patel episode on the Sean Ryan show, and I don't know if you're familiar with it, but he talks about government budgets and how it's okay to give money back to the government. It's okay to not spend your budget. And I remember at the end of my career, I got sent to range control, which was kind of a blessing for me, even though I knew it's like where you go to die as your career. But the SF guys would be out on the range towards the end of the year, and they're like, hey man, you guys should come hang out with us all day and help us blow off all this ammo, because we have to get rid of it. So getting my hands on they weren't foreign weapon systems to me, but like we didn't get to spend a whole lot of time with them in the conventional forces. It was kind of lucky if you did, and so getting to go out there and blow off rounds in the Barrett 50 cal, thousands of rounds in a day, and all of that was great. And John did talk about that with Marine Corps, but his story was a little bit different. The Marine Corps also gave pushback on that. They didn't want to participate in the SOCOM kind of joint coming together. I know they had been offered a couple of times to stand up with Special Operations Forces, and they said, "No, we're good. We're going to do it our way," kind of
That's
thing.
Right. We're all special. That was the argument.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah, that's exactly what John said too. Dude, so you do 25 years, right? 25 years in the Marine Corps. Why didn't you go to 30? I assume you probably, of course you could have as an officer. I know they cap us enlisted guys at 30 period, and it's time to walk away. Did you just reach the top and you were kind of done, or like what were the circumstances? And this is leading into the transition and all of the challenges that you face.
It's a great question because literally I retired 1 week before my first look at 06. And I had a lot of people that thought I was crazy, but also have two daughters that at the time were in, high school and middle school, and they liked where we lived. And so if I had stayed in, it was going to be, I knew I was going to end up in DC, which even though I grew up there, in fact, I was just there this weekend for my high school reunion, and actually Sunday witnessed one of the greatest things in my, in-person history of football. I was at the Redskins game. I call them the Redskins, when the Hail Mary was thrown, and that was just like unbelievable.
That's awesome.
And
how about that team, by the way?
But it was like, yes, very exciting. It's like we think the Snyder curse is finally over, but
good.
It was. So part of it was about my kids. I wanted them to be happy. I really didn't want to spend, be literally 7 hours away from them and do that commute back and forth just to, get promoted one more time. And so I made the decision, and that's the whole thing. What a lot of people didn't realize is, so my job at MARSOC as a lieutenant colonel was the equivalent of a colonel's job. It was actually a colonel's job, but they didn't have a colonel to put in there. So I was doing colonel's work as a lieutenant colonel. And it's like, what did I have to look forward to? I had been, to me, at the most exciting, vibrant organization in the Marine Corps because of the special ops stuff, that, I was going to go to the Pentagon and have to be the first guy there, last guy to leave, just doing that budget grind. And so it was like, you know what? And the other thing, and I'm sure a lot of our peers see this, is like, I stayed in originally after 9/11 because our country was at war. And I think for a lot of us, like, I'm not walking away when that's happening. That's why I joined. And so it was like, okay, here we are 8 years later, and, what are we doing? That was a part of it too in my mind. So I was like, you know what? I'm ready to move on, do other things. And And so that was really kind of went into the decision. It was about my kids first, and ready to kind of go into that next chapter, I think.
How did you prepare?
I think in some aspects that the Naval Postgraduate School, by being there for a year and a half of being in a academic environment, gave me a chance to kind of step back and think as far
To
as
evaluate who you are as a person.
yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah, and this is so important. I see this with so many transitioning veterans. I fell victim to this, particularly because my career was cut short with a med board, a medically
right,
retired. I was 9 years short. I knew I was going to go to 22. 22 is an arbitrary number, but there's
right,
reasons for that in the Army, and
yeah,
anybody listening to this will know that. But at 12 and a half years, almost 13 years, that's it. I had no plan, no idea.
right.
I hadn't spent any time with myself to understand who I am as a person without the Army.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's part of it. I mean, I think at one point you think like, oh, I might go, work as a defense contractor. I might go work as a government worker. And so I did some of those applications, and I did at first end up as a defense contractor because one, you made more up front, and the GS positions I was getting offered weren't at the level I wanted or I thought that I, definitely deserved. And the problem is like when you get into that GS world, one, you're in some cases, and I think you've seen this, it's like you're literally taking off your uniform, walking in the next day in civilian attire, doing the exact same job.
Yep.
And it's like, if you were going to do that, why not just stay in?
Yeah.
And so for me, that was a part of it. And I felt like at the time I was married to my my first wife, she was working full time as a government employee, that I could take that risk because I was going to have a retirement. I ended up getting a disability as well. And so I think I had always wanted to have my own business. I was a business major. And so that was kind of that thought after the military, right? This is your chance to explore and do things. And I think that's part of the problem with our transition process is they don't really help us do that, right? They don't.
I know that's the problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've through, I don't know, almost 60 of these now, I've just come to the conclusion by having this conversation that it's a cover your ass, check the block kind of thing for the military. And, if you really sit back and think about it, it makes a lot of sense. The military has one very specific mission, and they're going to keep you in that fixed mindset to be the best, soldier, sailor, airman, Marine, coast, puddle pirate, whatever, at that particular job for that particular organization for their particular mission. And that's it. It doesn't sway ever. You get no other perspective because you're busy trying to climb the rank ladder, right? Like do the thing, get the good NCOER so that you can get picked up faster and make a difference, right? And they don't really care what happens to you when you get out. And it was painfully obvious to me, like I said, getting sent to range control so that they can open up an MTO slot for, an E6, and then completely forgetting about you, not really caring what happens to you because now you're a number that doesn't matter to them. You're not useful to them. And why would they put any effort into preparing you to get out? And I think that's a large part of why I started this is to change that. Like if I can make a difference because now I can be the guy I didn't have when I got out to help you avoid those mistakes. And it's the number one thing is like you said, it's like, while you were in the Navy, war college, I guess is what I'll call it, you got a little taste of what it is to spend some time with yourself and evaluate who you are as a person in that setting versus like me deploying every other year and then coming back from Afghanistan and my career is now over. Never had a chance to figure that out.
Right. Yeah. You're literally in a case like what you were in. It's like, okay, you're now broken in the eyes of the military. We're going to help you get out and move on with your life, right? Whether it's medical retirement or something else, but we're not really helping you prepare for what would Adam be best at next, right? We're not sitting there. Let's give you some evaluation tests to find out what are your strengths and your weaknesses. What is it that you really want to do? I mean, I think we're probably both doing stuff now that we didn't necessarily expect we would be doing, but
Not
we're
at all.
enjoying it,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah, this is the furthest thing from what I thought I'd be doing. Honestly, like I kind of knew when I got out. I always wanted to find my way back to leadership and being a leader of soldiers. It's kind of ironic that now I get to be a leader for all branches of the military, even though I oftentimes question, like, am I the right person to be doing this? But man, is it a lot of fun, and it really does fill my cup to just improve somebody's situation in life, whether that be through a phone call on a random Saturday because, guy got out of the Army or the Navy and he's got a great job and they moved to Texas for this job, but they can't make any friends and they're struggling to make friends. And, just a 30-minute conversation, letting him vent or whatever that looks like, and wargaming it with him to find a solution, and come to find out, it's like, you're just a little impatient, man. You've only been there for less than 60 days. Like, give it some time, things don't happen overnight, kind of thing. Right.
And I think that's part of it, Adam. You kind of hit on it. I think sometimes that military mindset, right, is get things done, and so people expect it's not even I'll call it an easy button. It's like, hey, I did this, so this should happen next. And then we have to realize things aren't always going to happen at the pace that we want. And we have to, I guess, work on, if we haven't already, and maybe that's, like I said, where that little year and a half of education setting helped me is, okay, you got to have a little bit of patience. You got to plan things out.
It helps you slow down, and that's a huge thing. I mean, it's been coming up for me the last 4 or 5 days, right? With all the stuff we talked about offline before we started recording, with what's going on in my community and everything else, right? Like, it's okay. I had to slow down, take a step back, evaluate this from another angle, and it sucks, but also, like, we can push forward and figure it out and move on, because I know who I am. I know what direction I'm headed, and I don't need to get there tomorrow.
Right.
I love it, man. I love it. So what were some of the biggest challenges you faced in your transition? What's, like, when I say, transition hole and the transition's rough, what's the first thing that comes to mind for you?
I think initially, right, when you're, like I was on terminal leave for probably, right, that was another example of how you kind of time things out. I had literally 90 days of between leave that I hadn't used and then the leave because you're getting out to one. I use that as a way, because it was a summer for my kids to spend time with them, right? I could just be a dad, and I could go to their soccer camps, and we could do some traveling, because I was still getting my paycheck. And but then it was like, you start applying for jobs and you're not necessarily hearing anything back, because right then you get in that whole thing of, you can't start applying for stuff until you're kind of in that area. So, when I got offered my first job as a contractor, it was like, okay, great. And I was starting once my kids were back in school. So and I think that's important too, is you do see these people that it's kind of like they retire, or they have the retirement ceremony, and literally like a week later, they're back to work. It's like, no, take that time off, because you don't know that you're ever going to get that break again until you retire, and decompress. I think that's one of the mistakes that is made, but I think that also goes back to something you kind of hit on earlier, Adam, is that we don't do a good job, and this isn't just the military, this is our society, in teaching us about financial management responsibility as an individual. I mean, if you were putting money aside, right, you would have something to kind of allow you to have a little bit of freedom and wait to make that decision.
100%. I've talked to veterans, right, and they seek counsel or advice. For me, sometimes I'm like the last person you should probably be asking advice on. But I've talked. It runs the gamut. You can take my situation, being deployed every other year as an infantry guy. I did not do anything to save money because I didn't know if I was going to come home or not. Particularly as an infantry guy, going from 2003 to 2015. So I went through the surge and all of it. But then I've talked to guys who are like, I'm in this place right now. I've got enough put away that my wife and I can travel the world with our kids for an entire year before we run out of money. We've already planned it out, and I'm thinking about doing that. And my suggestion to them is do that.
Right.
Do that because you're going to find out in that year who you are, what really resonates with you. You're going to discover a lot of things that you're interested in that you didn't know. And they're going to be off the wall things that you would have never thought that you could ever make a career or a business out of. And I encourage that 1,000,000%, because I spent 8.5 years in that transition hole trying to figure out who I was and what resonated with me and what I wanted to be doing before I realized that we can literally shape our own lives. We are the arbiters of our own destiny, and we can go whatever direction we want to go, whether society says that's okay or not. And I think that's important for us to realize.
Right. And I think too, one of the things that, the military does, and I'm not saying that this is a Marine only trait, I'm sure it's all the other services, is we learn to adapt and overcome. And we have that kind of built in, because especially when you're out in the field and stuff, right, you end up in situations that, it does no good to complain, right? Because it's just going to continue to, it's not going to change.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, how can we make the best of this? Right. And I think that becomes part of the difference. And so I think, like for me, that was part of it. It's like, I had the one job. It was, what was funny is the job I was in, I may have stayed there, but then they were deciding like, oh, we're going to turn this into a GS position. And if you'd like it, we'd love to have you. But, you're going to take a $20,000 pay cut. I'm like, nah,
that's not
okay.
Yeah.
So I went to, like the next company, and then, the next company, I was enjoying that, but as tends to happen when you're not in charge of your own situation, the person that was my boss started kind of changing the rules of what I originally had been told when I was hired. So
like moving the goalpost kind of situation.
Yes, yes.
I hate that.
So I decided, you know what, I'm going to start my own company. I had a couple connections, and so I was doing government contract consulting. But then, kind of going back to what you talked about earlier, it's that whole thing of like, I don't think even when I first joined the military, I never said, oh, when I grow up, I want to be a government contract consultant, right? It wasn't like my passion. And so that's where eventually by 16, I moved into marketing. And so part of that was, well, one, I'd been working for myself since I started my consulting business. And so I liked the fact that I was in charge of my own destiny. I liked the fact that I decided what hours I, was going to work, who I was going to work with. That's where if you do retire or you do have kind of that pension of any sort from the military, you have a little bit of a cushion if you're smart, that you don't have to be desperate and take on things that you really don't want to just because you got to pay the bills.
I love that you're bringing this up because, again, we can use myself as an example. We own one car. It's my wife's because she works outside of the home. I don't need a vehicle because I structure my finances so that I can pursue this almost indefinitely. As you grow, however, the costs get higher to operate. And so, there are things that I'm looking at having to do to bring in some cash flow, now. But, I wanted to ask you, we talk about people jumping at the first opportunity that they get. It sounds like you kind of maybe did that a little bit in the contracting space. Maybe that's okay. I don't like to see people jumping at the first job that they offer that they get just so that they have peace of mind that they're going to have an income and they go straight to work. But also, like what you said about, you can have the GS position, but it's going to cost you $20,000. For those that really want to be an entrepreneur and don't want to be an entrepreneur, it's okay to job hop. It really is okay. It doesn't mean what it used to mean. In fact, there's a lot of companies that would like to see a plethora of experience from you. A year here, 2 years there, a year here. Why do you keep moving? As long as you can justify it to a hiring manager, you're going to be okay. Do you agree with that?
No, I do. Because I think one of the things that I think I don't know if I'd say I learned it. I think it, maybe a little bit of, you think about it as common sense, and it's interesting, especially when you deal with other, peers, if you want to say from a veteran standpoint, is you have to be prepared to constantly be learning, right? And so how many people do we know, Adam, that are our peers that like, oh, I don't want to deal with, social media. I don't want to do, it's like, or I don't like technology, it's
90%, 90% of them.
Yeah.
And I was that guy. I'm sure you were that guy. And then I discovered, I got out of my own way and actually took the action. And, I mean, I'm told this is impressive, particularly for LinkedIn, but I went from 92 to 5,200 followers in less than a year and really discovered what the power of networking and building a solid network is and what that can actually do for you. And it doesn't have to be in the business world. It can be in the corporate world, but it provides you with so many opportunities. I had no idea how many opportunities I was missing out on because I was agnostic to social media and I hated it and I didn't want to do that. Like I don't want my face out there. Well, newsflash, it's 2024. You're carrying around an iPhone in your pocket. It listens and watches everything that you do. And if you don't believe me, just check out your ads on your social media feed. Don't open any social media for the entire day and then scroll it at night. And I guarantee you're going to be advertised at least 3 products that you talked about that day.
It is. It's crazy. It is absolutely crazy, but it's so true because that happened to us recently, and my wife and I were just like blown away that we were talking about something with a friend very unique and specific, and like all of a sudden I'm getting actually what it was is I was talking to the guy that is the district commander for the American Legion here that my Legion is a part of. And he lives in, I think it's Victorville or something like that. And all of a sudden I start getting this like Facebook suggestions about that place. And I'm like, I never typed anything in about it, but there it was. So.
It happened to me last night. I did a podcast recording with a guy who turned me on to a AI tool because I'm diving into the AI automation world. And he's like, this is one that you're going to want to know. And then last night and this morning, I've been getting ads for that very same thing. I never typed it in. I never searched anything on it. I was like, that costs money. I don't have budget to add a new tool to my stack right now. So not going to turn myself on with this. And man, they're shoving it down my throat hard. And I think this is a perfect segue into your business and what you're doing. So let's talk about what sparked your interest in marketing and particularly the Amazon Influencer Program. Like, how did you fall into this? Because this is, I just learned about the Amazon Influencer Program this morning, actually. Really in depth learned about what it is and how powerful it is. Maybe that makes me kind of behind the power curve because, maybe I should have known that. But there's so many things out there to know. Like, I don't feel too bad about it. So how did you find all of this? And what, first of all, I got to comment on Fusion Marketing. That's awesome. That's so awesome that your last name just kind of fits into it and it fits. So kudos to you on that, because I think that's ultra powerful. But how did you land here?
Well, it's funny because so initially I was doing consulting for the what was it called? The North Carolina Military Business Center, and I was like the guy that was dealing with people that wanted to do contract work with the government in Eastern North Carolina because I was still in the Camp Lejeune area. And so we would have these events periodically that I would go to in person. And I started to run into these people that had, I guess we'll call them tables. And they're like, oh, we're doing social media for companies. And I was like, oh, I didn't know that's a thing. So I started to, goes back to learning. So I started to go on Facebook and I started to seeing, these, pages for businesses. And, as I got to know these people better, I'd find out like, okay, they're charging, this is back 8 years ago, they're charging these people $200 a month to basically post things for them on Facebook and to help them. And it's like, well, I could do that. It's like, that doesn't seem hard. Some of this is just common sense and, having a business background. I was like, all right, I was in a BNI group. And so I had some, friends from BNI. It's like, hey, would you be willing to hire me to, help you with your social media? Like, yeah, I know I need to do it, but I know. And so that's kind of how I got started, that way. And then I just kept learning. I started joining, Facebook groups that were teaching, you how to do better social media. Started going to conferences like Social Media Marketing World in San Diego. And then in 2018, when Facebook decided that, you wanted to go live was a thing, I was like, well, not real excited about this, but all right, I'm going to get in front of the camera and start doing this because I can't ask my clients to do it if I'm not willing to do it.
Yep.
And so that's really what started me on my video journey. And I had a show for about 5 years called the Tim and Jim Show. You can go see it on YouTube and Facebook. And so you can see how bad we were originally. And so there's hope for any of you out there. And so then what was funny is, because I had been doing the, in a sense, just like you're probably doing, I think, producing your own show, when COVID happened, people started saying, hey, can you help us with our show? And so I had gotten to know people like in the StreamYard community, people like Ross Brand. And so Ross Brand, and I had learned about the Amazon Associates program a long time ago, which, is, like we were talking about, is anybody can become an Amazon associate, even if you've got because they'll even consider like your website, your Instagram account or whatever. And so they'll ask you like, well, where are you going to share these links? And you tell them, oh, I'm going to share it on Instagram. I'm going to share it on my LinkedIn company page. And as long as you identify all that, they'll let you do it. Of course, right? The fine catch being I think you have to sell 6 products in 180 days or something like that. But so I was in that, and I had done enough to, stay in the program. So Ross Brand says, hey, Amazon's starting this influencer program, and he did a short YouTube video, and here's how you apply. And so at the time, Twitter was one of those platforms that you could use to apply for it. It was still called Twitter. And I had about 10,000 Twitter followers at the time because I had done a lot with Twitter. I was part of a Twitter chat called Twitter Smarter. And I applied and got approved like instantly. I was like, wow. So then you find out you get a storefront on Amazon. In our case, it's we have a redirect, but it's dealcasters.shop. And so you can post idea list, you can post photos. And then they started this thing where you could put product videos up. And so me and my friend Chris Stone had always wanted to do something together. And so literally right after I got approved, I said, hey, Chris, we're going to finally have a show. So in like 2 hours, we kind of brainstormed. We came up with the ideal casters. Our thing is like, don't fear the gear. We help people that are live streamers and podcasters with technology. And as that's evolved, we actually have a second YouTube channel that we call Men About the House, because we do like videos of stuff that, stuff to use in your backyard and things like that. But when it was first ramping up, right, we would go live on Amazon.com. Of course, sometimes people say it's not Prime, it's like live on the Amazon.com website. That first Black Friday, we went live for an hour and we had 10,000 viewers.
That's incredible.
And we were just like blown away that that's what was happening, because that's where things have changed, and you've got to be right. It goes back to that whole adapting thing. It used to be, as an example, if we were talking about your microphone and we would they let you literally put products in a carousel and we would highlight it. That video of us talking, even if we were talking about how your day is going, Adam, would be playing on the product page. And so if somebody clicked on that video and watched, I don't even think they had to watch a very long time, and then they continued shopping, well, Amazon would put a cookie on that person, and anything they bought we would get a commission on of anywhere from, I guess it's 1% to 4%. So, we started seeing some significant money from that. But then the next thing that started happening was we kind of had you want to call it a dream list of companies we would like to work with. One of them being Shure, Heil, and
I'd love to work with Shure.
Well, guess what? We got in touch with them through a mutual friend we had, and we basically we work with Shure. Now they don't pay us, but what they do is they provide us products
That's
for
enough.
free.
That's more than enough.
Yeah,
Because I want
before
that
they get released.
SM7B so bad. I can't stand it. I just can't justify it because my AT2020 is, I mean, it's a great microphone. It works just as well. I've had it for years and years and years. The sound is obviously awesome, but man, that SM7B, that's the industry standard.
And that's actually what I'm talking in. It's actually below my frame, and it's got so I'm actually using the SM7DB, which has got the Cloud Lifter built in, and that's another company that we work with is Cloud. So Roger Cloud, we've had him on our podcast, or our Amazon show has been on. We've talked about their stuff, and so that's been one of those things. And then literally, one, because we're on Amazon, and then it took us a little bit of time, but I want to say it was in about May timeframe, our YouTube channel for Dealcasters monetized, because what we would do, and part of this was to protect our intellectual property, is we would take the video we post on Amazon and we would put it on YouTube. Because what was happening and still happens is people are stealing your Amazon videos, putting it on YouTube as if it's their own, and putting links so that they get money off of it. So by doing that, when you upload your videos, you're instantly adding that layer of protection. Well, what's worked out really well for us is our videos and our subscribers is we qualified. We're in I guess it's the partner program. So not only are we making money off of Amazon, now we're making money off of YouTube. Plus, we have the product links in the YouTube video that take people back to Amazon.
It's all connected. It's all connected. And that's awesome because there's some other elements there too, right? Like when you SEO your YouTube correctly, now you're getting into the Google SEO SERPs, right? And now you're giving yourself more leverage to make more money and have more people find you.
And it's interesting because I think more so now, because our YouTube channel monetized, we're starting to get more emails from people like saying, "Hey, we saw your content on YouTube. We'd love for you to do some product, videos about, whatever their product is." And that kind of goes back to, we're in a place where, and it kind of goes back to, having that, military, retirement or pension is like, I don't have to say yes. It's like, you know what, this doesn't fit in our model. Like you said, Shure, that was a no-brainer. We love Shure. We love a lot of these companies that we've gotten to work with. But even still, sometimes like when we tell people when they get started, and I'm, always happy to talk to you about this, Adam, it's like, you got stuff sitting around your house that you bought on Amazon. So you do those product videos, but like I told and what's funny is, so my daughter, I have 3 daughters, but I'll call it the middle daughter. She's a military spouse. Her husband's in the Air Force out in California right now, and they've got my first grandson. Well, military's not paying enough for them to be able to afford childcare, so she's a stay-at-home mom, but she got approved as a TikTok and an Amazon influencer. So she's talking about, products for the family, for the kids. And so I told her, it's like, do 3 videos for Amazon, wait till those are approved before you move on. Because once you get those 3 videos approved and they're on your storefront, now it opens up that whole other commission box of, they're going to take some of these videos, you have no control over it though, and put it on product pages. And so you're on the product page, you'll scroll down, you'll see like a video, like, how this microphone works, right? And so you click on it, you watch some of that video, and now you're like, you know what, I'm going to buy this. Guess what? I just made a commission off of you watching my video. And so,
and that applies to everything in their Amazon cart as well, not just the item that they clicked on, which is really cool, because 1 to 4% doesn't sound like a lot. But if you're somebody like me, I put a bunch of crap in my wait list or my wish list until, I'm going to make one big purchase, save on boxes or whatever, until I really need it. And then I'll get like 10 items at one time, so somebody's probably made a ridiculous amount of money off of my Amazon cart, I'm sure.
Right. Right. Yeah. And so that's the whole thing, right? It's like, and so in some aspects it's passive income, if you want to use that term. But sometimes what I think is, when we talk about passive income, it's really not passive because you've got to do some work to get it to repeat, right? So we're taking the time to make these videos, but we also are more about quality over quantity. So that's been intentional. Amazon isn't the only thing that I do, right? I do consulting with people that are wanting to do stuff with marketing. I'm like you. I'm a huge LinkedIn fan. In fact, I would probably say my two favorite platforms, whether you're a business, an individual, nonprofit, because I work with some veteran nonprofits, LinkedIn and YouTube, right? Create that company page, create that YouTube channel, because you make videos educating, right? This is about educating people what you do. They're searching, how do I do X? You put that to your point about the SEO. Now they're finding your video. Now they're subscribing to you. Now they're, right? It's that whole thing of you're building know, like, and trust.
Yeah.
And so now they're telling their friends about you. And next thing you know, your community is growing. You're, making a little bit of money on the side, because that's the whole thing too, right? People understand. It's like, look, if you're going to ask me what microphone to use, Adam, and I share this link with you, you're not paying more because I gave you that link. And so it's just that, okay, sure, if I can click on a friend's link and they make a couple bucks off of me using this, why not? And so I think that's
and I'll tell you, it's the coolest feeling in the world when that happens, when somebody uses your affiliate link and you get a payout on it. I've gotten a couple on Podmatch. Shout out to those of you who've used my Podmatch awesome. to sign up. Affiliates, I mean, you can have an entire business where you're just an affiliate for people. It's what I tried to start in the beginning. However, be wary, because there's the YouTube gurus out there that are going to push you into ClickBank affiliate marketing, which is scummy marketing, and you don't want to do it. It's worthless products. But yeah, I mean, it's super powerful. We were talking offline about how I've got all these stack of tools that I use to run my business, and I need to get it in more places and create more videos around it and push affiliate links because they're so powerful.
Right. Well, and I think too, like, so as a veteran, like, how do you get into what you and I are doing, Adam? I think part of it is, like, you have to understand that if we look at the younger, we'll call them so one of the things my friend Peter Lasowski, the founder of Relatable company I'm working with, talks about is we are the digital analogs. Like, we grew up before all this technology.
Yeah, we had both.
Right. And now you've got the native digitals, which are like our kids. They all grew up with this stuff. It's like second nature to them. So as a analog, you've got to understand that to stay relevant in today's world, you've got to start getting into this stuff, even if it's just a little bit of a time. If you're afraid of live video, right? Start out doing recorded video. Here's the other thing, right? Not everyone needs to have a show. So as an example, and you kind of hit on it, amazing tool, Podmatch, build a profile on Podmatch as a guest and get interviewed about whatever it is you're passionate about, because people are looking for good guests. And there's so many folks in the military that has some amazing stories that I think is worth sharing. I mean, I'm in the process of starting a new podcast for the Georgia Veterans Network. It's going to be called Georgia Veterans Voices. I'm definitely going to reach out to you, Adam, to have you on the show, because part of it is not only sharing stories about what people are doing to help veterans, but also talking to veterans about their journey. Because it kind of comes down to, I always kind of joke that you and I can say the same exact thing, but what I say won't resonate with the person, but you say the same exact thing. It's like, yes, that's what I needed to hear. It's kind of like with our kids, right? We tell our kids what to do. They
always have to learn the hard way.
Yeah. Or someone else that's not us tells them, and like, well, so-and-so told me I should do this. That's why I did it. It's like, well, I think I told you that before.
Here's another to add to what you're saying. For those of you who are uncomfortable with social media and being on video, I agree with Jim. Start by doing pre-recorded video. That way, you get some of that fear out, but also understand that when you transition to live video, there's going to be a learning curve. I remember that from starting this podcast, and then I used to run a series on my LinkedIn content. I need to go back to it because the audience actually loved it, but I started doing, I called them walking videos. On my morning walks, I would put out my posts for the day on LinkedIn, whatever that was going to be about. And I remember the first few times I did it, trying to talk to a camera while I'm like, live, it was really weird. It was different somehow. And then also go set up that profile on Podmatch, because you don't need a platform. There's so many people out there looking for quality guests on their podcast. And also, it feels really good to not sit on your story, to get it out, to tell people, what you've been through and where you've gone, and to see the support and the acknowledgement and the fascination behind, stories sell. That's the bottom line. And you have a story, so there's no reason you couldn't be selling. People want to hear your story. It doesn't matter if you think your story's boring or it's not that interesting, or, any myriad of other excuses I know that you're sitting there coming up with. I promise you, there's 7 billion people on the planet, and they want to hear your story. It's crazy to me.
Right. No, I agree 100%. And, so it's just, don't be afraid to do it. I think podcasting is great too, because, in some aspects, it's going to be audio. But as I learned from Chris Kremitzos recently, he was here in Atlanta. We did a pod meetup at the or a Podfest meetup at the American Legion that I'm on the board of. YouTube as a podcast platform is growing by leaps and bounds, and it's becoming a huge part of how people are consuming podcasts. So, that's why I'm always, encouraging people, be a guest, get out there, get on there. That I think is definitely important as well. And then there's a lot of opportunity. You've hit on a little bit, right? AI is coming, or I guess you could say is here. It's not the end all and be all.
It's a tool. It's a tool, and you have to know how to use it. And I am just as guilty as everybody else of trying to use it to replace things. It wasn't until I understood that it was a tool and that it just makes your life easier and saves you time that I really started to get traction and understanding how to use it.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
I'm with you. Before we finish up here, 3 pieces of advice for anybody that's listening who, I believe a personal brand is extremely important these days. I think that it can do a lot for you. And I think that everybody should be working on their personal brand, whether that's, you wanting to find that dream corporate job that you want, or you wanting to take your talents and skills with your core beliefs and values and create a business around that, because I believe that that's absolutely possible as well. And I mean, literally anything. I talked to a woman last week who's made over $1 million this year by delivering pumpkins to people's front porches.
Wow.
like you can really do a lot, and you don't give yourself enough credit for it. But anybody who's looking to start that personal brand in the social media space, what are 3 pieces of advice you have for them and how to get started growing that audience?
Yeah. Well, first of all, the first thing is you don't need to invest a lot of money. You can literally start with your phone. You've got the smartphones today have, 4K cameras. So maybe it's just a matter of getting a lavalier mic that you can attach to it, because, audio is the most important thing. But start to do video to explain about who you are, what you are. To your point, Adam, post that on your Facebook, post that on your LinkedIn. If it's under 10 minutes, you can post it to LinkedIn. I think it's actually maybe moving to 15. Don't be afraid to change, right? Don't be afraid to shift. Yeah, I think, and I could say this even happened with me. I think there's a stat out there that most veterans within the first, I'll say 5 years, I might have the number off, are going to change jobs 3 times. Right?
Easy.
So don't feel like you've got to get it right that first time. Life happens. You're going to find that, this isn't what I wanted to do. Other opportunities may present themselves. And don't be afraid to jump to that other opportunity, right? Figure out what it is that makes you tick. I think Adam and I both have a similarity. What motivates me is to help other people succeed and seeing their success more so, because it's kind of like, sure, money's a nice thing, but it's not the end all and be all. There's a lot of miserable rich people. Yeah.
It's a tool. It's a tool and to your point, money, you need to, first of all, to define what success is to you.
Right.
Because if it's money, you're not going to get to where you're going. It will never be enough. And, an example of that is success to me means I have full control of my time, meaning I can do whatever I want, whenever I want, with whoever I want, and I'm not accountable to anybody but myself. And success monetarily to me looks like, within reason, I can just go swipe the debit card and not have to worry about what's coming out of the bank account. If I want to take me and my wife to Colombia for a week and we want to explore, I know that I can spend whatever amount of money I need to while I'm there and not have to worry about, do I have it in the bank account? And, really within reason, I'm not going to be buying $30,000 vehicles every day, but, who needs to do that, right? Like really sit with yourself, prioritize, what's important to you in your life. All this, it's stuff. We don't need stuff,
right.
Like we have enough stuff. So really think about that, and it'll really help you understand what success means to you.
Yeah. And I think the final thing would be is just, keep an open mind, constantly be learning. And if you're looking for a, that support network of other veterans, look into things like, the American Legion, the VFW, just DAV, and what you may find, right? Go check out different posts, because maybe the first one you go to just isn't your tribe, but get involved. And then there's a lot of activities out there where people are like, having rut groups. So, make sure you check out Meetup and some of those things.
Alignable is a good one.
Yes.
I don't pay for it, but a lot of fruit that's been bared from that, just in local networking events. I have a free community now, so come join my community of like-minded veterans, right? Like, be vulnerable, share what you're going through, get actionable advice from solid people who are building businesses and being successful. Like, it's out there. You have to get out of your own way and go find it. Nobody's coming to save you. Essentially, you need to save yourself. You're more than capable of it.
Right. And I will say one other thing is, because I did this when I was going through my first divorce. Don't be afraid to go talk to a professional therapist. That can definitely be life-changing. It can help you. So, don't always feel like you got to be the tough guy or the tough gal and not talk to someone that can maybe figure out what it is that's deep-seated that's maybe causing you to have some of the challenges you are.
I love it, man. Jim, tell everybody how they can get in touch with you if they want some coaching on the Amazon influencer program or social media marketing knowledge. How can they get in touch with you? How can they get on your calendar and book some time with you?
Yeah, I mean, really the best way is we talked about earlier, LinkedIn. Just go to Jim Fuse on LinkedIn. Or you can also, if you want to see what we're doing on Amazon, go to our YouTube channel, Dealcasters, or just go to dealcasters.shop, and that'll take you to our storefront on Amazon, so you can kind of get an idea of what we're doing and what you might want to do as well.
I love it. Ladies and gentlemen, I give to you Mr. Jim Fuse. Thank you so much for being here, Jim. Please don't forget to like, rate, review, subscribe, download. Help me get this in front of 1 million veterans before May 9th, 2025, the day I turn 40. There's 19 million veterans in the United States, so I know that we can make that happen. If you would all just take 5 seconds to hit the share button, I would greatly appreciate it. We will see you guys with another awesome episode next week. Take care. That's our show, and I'm truly thankful you've joined us at The Strategic Veteran. If our conversation today sparked curiosity, or if you're ready to elevate your game, I'm here to help. Visit thestrategicveteran.com for exclusive show notes and resources, or to book a coaching session directly with me. Take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and share your review. Your support makes all the difference. For more insights and daily strategies, let's connect on LinkedIn and keep the conversation going. Remember, this isn't just a podcast, it's your strategic advantage in action. Until our next rendezvous, stay bold and continue the mission.